Hi. I am a landscape designer, and I came into this through having worked in prairie restoration and taught at a community college teaching literature about nature. So I came into it with a bias toward native plants. And doing business, you sort of learn to be a little more flexible and not so purist about what's a native and what's not a native. But I want to show you first a graphic, and I'm sorry I don't have a PowerPoint for you, but this is a graphic of the roots of native plants in Illinois. And what you'll see is how deep the roots are on these perennial plants. And what that says to us is that when the water falls, when the rain falls, it will be brought all the way down into the soil by the roots of the plants, which help to move the rain, move the water down into the soil. So one of the advantages of planting native plants, and you don't have to plant exclusively native plants, but including native plants in your garden, is that you get this increased permeability of the soil through the roots of the native plants. These are all perennial plants. They're grasses and forbs. And I'll pass this around. I'm sorry I don't have copies of it, but if you're interested in it, I can probably get it scanned for you. Or if you Google something like prairie plant roots.
Maybe we can put it on the website, the North Center website.
That'd be great. It's a well-used copy, that one is, and you'll see there's marks all over it.
It seems like you could probably, if we write it down, it seems like we'll be able to get this off.
I would think it would
Online,
probably be
right?
online, right.
That
And,
Kentucky blue, that was really.
yeah, I mean, they're really astonishing.
Everything other than regular grass.
Another book I want to recommend to you is by Douglas Tallamy, who is an entomologist at the University of Maryland. The book is called Bringing Nature Home. And Tallamy makes the argument that home gardeners can help to increase biodiversity throughout the landscape, not just in your own home garden, by planting native plants. Because the native plants attract the native insects. And the insects they attract have co-evolved with the birds and the other wildlife, so that the plants and the wildlife have, over eons, figured out when something's going to bloom, how you got to get there in order to get the pollen or the seeds or whatever it is you need. So the native plants are key to maintaining the larger spectrum of biodiversity. One of the changes in my thinking that this book brought about is he emphasizes how important woody plants are. And what I mean by woody plants are trees and shrubs, essentially. The trees and shrubs are the workhorses in the garden. So if you're going to plant a tree or a shrub, and you have an option, planting a native is going to make a significant difference. If we can persuade even a percentage of home gardeners to do that, then it's going to benefit all of the natural areas in Illinois and everywhere. And obviously the corollary of that is that there are invasive plants, and that you want to avoid planting the invasive plants, because those plants, the burning bush, for example, which many people have in their yards and which many builders will plant in yards. Do you know what I mean by a burning bush? It's the one, doesn't flower, but it has great red leaves. Birds eat the seeds of that thing. They go into the natural areas, they poop them out, the seeds germinate, and so you get this invasive plant. There's a few of those that really overplanted in our area. One of the ones that is equally invasive is barberry, which is the one with thorns, and it comes in either a green, or you can sometimes see it in a kind of purple leaf, and it does well in the sun. It's pretty, but it's invasive, and it's really smart not to plant it. Another very invasive plant is miscanthus, which is the huge tall grass that you see in lots of places. The one that gets, sometimes 5-6 feet tall and has really pretty seed heads. They're really pretty. There's a reason why people plant them, but they're very invasive. So if people get even those 3 plants out of the home landscape, it can make a big difference. So I'm making a case here that planting native plants can increase biodiversity, can help to cut down the interruption of biodiversity through the planting of invasives, and can help you with permeability of the soil. But the fourth argument for putting native plants in your plant palette, and again, I'm not suggesting that you do only natives, is that they're natural to our habitat. They're easy to maintain. They're sturdy. They're not going to go, oh, I have the vapors over the winter and die back. You know, they know what it's going to do. They know it's going to snow in April. So they're suited to our landscape. And what I have here, let me see how many people. I have 10 copies of this. I didn't have time this morning to make more. But if you would like to get a copy of it, actually I need one to talk from. If you would like to get a copy, this is the second page. It's on both sides. So it's a list of native plants for the home garden. And there's
I've got page 2 or something that.
yeah, so you should be getting a two-sided dock
And then, so,
and then a very brief one-sided dock. I started with the woodies because those are probably the most important ones that you can plant. And you'll see my formatting is inconsistent. Probably the most important plant you could put in the ground in Illinois is an oak. And there are lots of different species of oak, but the oaks are the bedrock of our prairie state landscape, at least as far as the trees are concerned. The problem, of course, with oaks is that they're too big for most yards, but they can be planted in parkways. So if the city comes and takes down your ash because it's got emerald ash borer, or for whatever reason you don't have a tree in your parkway and you would like to have a tree in your parkway, call the alderman's office, ask if you can get an oak.
Is that on the list of suggested trees?
It is on the list of suggested trees, yes. It is really the best tree for our landscape. Some other natives that will work in full sun, and I've divided these basically into sun and shade. So parkway trees are generally, you know, they get a fair amount of sun. If you don't have a parkway tree, a tree in your front yard will get a fair amount of sun. Some people have sun in their backyards. So trees for sun, the tilia, and what I've done here, because I didn't have pictures for you, is I've given you the Latin name first and then the common name. And that way you can be as snooty as a designer and Google the Latin name and you'll get references to better websites if you use the Latin name. You'll get references to the Chicago Botanic Garden or the Missouri Botanic Garden or the U.S. Wildflower Association, but you'll get better references. It won't be all nurseries trying to sell you the plant and tell you that it's wonderful everywhere. So the American basswood is a tree that the city frequently plants in parkways. It's got large leaves, fairly large leaves, and it gives you good shade. The hackberry is another nice one. The ironwood is another nice one. And the crataegus, the thornless cockspur hawthorn, and this is where you get to learn Crataegus crusgalli variation inermis. Inermis means thornless. It has pretty flowers and nice berries. So if you had a sunny area and you wanted a decent sized tree, didn't have enough room for an oak, a hawthorn would be a nice choice. If you're like most of us and you've got a fair amount of shade and you want a smaller tree, an understory tree that's not going to interfere with your power lines or get in the way too much, then for sun you've got a number of choices. The Carpinus caroliniana, or musclewood, is a beautiful tree, and what's partly really pleasant about it is that its bark looks like a very muscled arm. So it's got a really nice shape and a nice color. It's a small understory tree, no flowers. You probably all know flowering dogwood. It didn't used to work in our area because it doesn't like totally awful temperatures. We seem to be now borderline. I have one right next to my house. It's on the south side of the house, so it gets, and I'm on an alley, so it gets a fair amount of sun, but it's sheltered from wind by being right next to the house, and it's really a pretty plant. And I've planted them for a number of clients, and they're all doing fine, so I think you can safely plant that. Red buckeye is a nice small tree with flowers. The red bud you probably all know. It's going to be flowering in 3 weeks maybe. You can see the buds going all along the branches. It's really fun because it doesn't just flower at the end, you know, it flowers all along the branches. The service berries, there's a bunch of different species, so when it says Amelanchier or SPP, that means variety of species of Amelanchier. They have white flowers in early spring, good fall color. The birds love the berries, but the berries are delicious. And people used to make service berry jam out of those berries. But you'd have to be real patient and you'd have to be real persistent because you have to get them before the birds get them. But it's a really pretty tree. I have one of those outside my dining room window, and it's a pleasure to watch it as it buds. And you know, especially when you can get a tree right outside a window, so that you can look at the crown of the tree. These short trees are really nice for that. The Cornus alternifolia, or pagoda dogwood, is called, it's an Illinois native plant, so the word pagoda in there is a little bit distracting. But it's because the branches go out horizontally like this. So there's, you know, horizontal branches here and here and here and here, and then they get a little shorter up here. So, and it's got dogwoody looking flowers on it too, so it's a sweetie. Shrubs for sun. The Physocarpus, the 9-bark, is a very nice shrub, but the straight species tends to get powdery mildew. So you want to ask at the garden center for a newer cultivar that doesn't get plucked. Do you all know what a cultivar is? Thank you. It's called, we call them cultivars. It's a cultivated variety. So they take genes from the straight species and meddle with them a little bit, or I don't know exactly how they do it. Sometimes a plant will have what they call a sport, where instead of being consistent, it'll have some sort of different variety of leaf structure or color, and then they'll clone those. A lot of plants are clonal. There's actually apple varieties where there is a parent, a single tree that is the parent of all of the apple varieties. It's pretty fun. So there are cultivars of the 9-bark. Sometimes people call them nativars, and there's some debate about whether they are as good for the environment, whether they do the kind of work that the straight species does. So I'm not going to try to answer that for you. I love the red twig dogwood. You probably all know it. It is not the one that has the variegated leaves. That's a European red twig dogwood. The native red twig dogwood just has green leaves. But it has little, not particularly fabulous flowers that start very, very early, almost as soon as it's leafed out, so like May. And it flowers all summer long, and it fruits all summer long, so that the flowers that you got in May are going to be fruits in late June, and the birds will start coming. And the birds love the fruits of the red twig dogwood. And the potentilla is a little short baby like so, with little yellow flowers, and it's a very nice sweet plant. For shade, it's harder for natives, but the two I've got for you are the hydrangea. The straight species hydrangea arborescens, which mostly you buy as an Annabelle, although there's now another one called Incredible. The straight species is a woodland plant, and it is a native. Aronia, the black chokeberry, is nice, and it comes in a red form too, but the blackberry form is a little. So the black one is melanocarpa, and the red one is, I can't remember what it is, but it's got white flowers in spring and berries in fall. I don't know how much time I have here, so I don't necessarily need to walk you through all of these because you've got them. I've got perennials on here, perennials for sun and perennials for shade. And then I've got rain garden plants for sun, and shrubs for sun, and rain garden perennials and shrubs for shade. And Ken, are you going to talk about rain gardens?
I am.
A little bit?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, good. So here are a bunch of plants that you can use for rain gardens. Shade is harder than sun. We are in a prairie state. The plants that are native to Illinois are for the most part full sun plants. If you think about the prairie is full sun. There's lots of nice woodland spring flowering plants. because the woods haven't leafed out yet, and so they get enough sun to be able to flower in the spring. But it is harder to find summer and fall flowering plants that are not full sun, that are native. But is there anyone who did not get a copy of this who would like one?
I have a question. I was wondering if you have a suggestion where we can find some of these.
Okay, that is a very, very good question. It is, sometimes Gethsemane has a decent palette of native plants, but I would say you Google it, you see what it looks like, you think you want it in your garden, you call me. And the next time I'm doing a plant order, I include yours in my plant order.
And I have another question.
Yes,
The black choke area, would that be a good choice to add to my Parkway corner?
it would.
Because I feel like I need a pillar in there because the asters were doing so well after the, I know, but I can prune it back, right? If it's too big or?
Yes, you can prune them back, yeah.
Yeah, that's on the parkways too. The last year, which is great, everything grew in very well, and on the corners that I try to work with from time to time, some of the stuff is getting, at least from the perspective, it seems like how do you figure out how to remove things, because they seem like they're getting well overgrown, and then what happens then is that from the bottom up come these vines, which I know are just invasive vines, that are not good for anything because they choke off everything else, or they're, but the second thing is that now the plants that we've put in are getting so tall, and for corners, the concern is that, someone driving isn't going to see a person crossing. And, and I've cut them back, but then you're cutting off flowers. You're cutting off parts that are going to flower later in the year. And so I was wondering how to sort of reach size of a plant, sort of customize it, because it seems to me that they're small areas and they need to have somewhat lower, but still plants that do what you were talking about with the permeability, because that's an important feature of these. So I don't know about recommendations for that, because it seems like now they've kind of, like at least on our corner here at the 2000 block of Bradley, the couple of the corners have gotten a little out of control.
Okay, so that is one of the downsides of some native plants, that they self-seed and they do get out of control, because they're used to a crowded prairie where they have to elbow other plants out of the way. I have a cup plant in my yard that my daughter gave me for Mother's Day about 10 years ago. That is, I had a cup plant in my yard. I now have 4,000 cup plants in my yard. I try to keep one or two because the birds like the seeds, but I swear at them a lot. That doesn't help. So I don't know do you know what the plants are that are getting too tall?
I don't, because I wasn't involved in the planting. I
Okay.
just do maintenance on it, so I
Okay.
can't tell you.
Because there are species you can cut back and they will still flower.
Okay.
Like the New England aster, you have to cut that back. You cut it back up until the 4th of July.
So maybe this year, just rather than, because I was thinking of removing some stuff, and maybe this year, rather than doing that, just keep it cut back and see what happens.
Exactly.
Okay.
Think of it as a science project.
Yeah, that's okay.
There you go.
Sounds good.
Natives are hard to kill, right? I mean, they're hard to,
They are hard to kill, which of course is what we want.
Right.
But they do self-seed. So if you can monitor it enough that you notice what it looks like when it's coming up, you notice what the leaves look like before it flowers. And if you see that proliferating too much, then you know to just weed some of them out.
Okay.
And a weed is a plant that doesn't belong in that place at that time. So, any other questions? If you've got this, my email is on it, so please feel free. Okay,
So you gave the firebush and the thorn bush. Are there any others that you would say under no circumstances plant this? That this is an insidious plant?
well, do you all know what garlic mustard looks like when it comes up? It is an invasive, it's not something anybody would plant, but it's really worth getting it out of your yard right away because it has 1 million flowers, and each of those flowers has 1 million seeds, and they germinate like crazy. Garlic mustard. It's got a kind of a rough texture leaf, and it's a light grayish green, and the flowers look like little tiny white flowers. They'll be starting to flower pretty soon, unfortunately. Yes.
Some, at least a few in each of the Parkway Corners that we have right now.
Okay, that's a great question. And
Yeah. Because I'm willing to go get
if you want to email me, because I have a hole in my head and things fall out, email me and tell me roughly how many you want. I will then contact the grower, because last year they were very hard to get your hands on, because they didn't grow enough of them. There's two kinds of milkweed that we mostly plant in our gardens here. One is Asclepias tuberosa. The tuberosa one is the orange flower that flowers in late May, and that feeds the worms, the larvae. Thank you, I do have words. And the other one is Asclepias incarnata, and the incarnata is the pink and it's taller. So tuberosa is about yay high, and incarnata is about yay high, and incarnata will self-seed all over the place, which I think is fine. Incarnata is,
They each will be each, or like, what would you?
and they both want sun. So if it's a shady garden,
Yeah, how about the?
We have some of the tall that, we'll see if it makes it back, but that Jody had brought back from Minnesota with her.
Well, see, that's the way to do it.
And so we have some in our corners, so just have to take a look, because we'll see if they make it back. We'll see what happens.
yeah, just let me know. And in fact, that really goes for if you want native plants and you can't source them locally at the garden centers, let me know. And I put in big plant orders fairly regularly. I can't get you a plant of it unless I'm able to tag it onto a client order, because I have to order $500 worth of plants to have them delivered, and I'm not driving out to St. Charles. So, but there is a place in St. Charles where you could conceivably go if you wanted to.
There's also a place here